understand that. So
Okay. Hi, Peter. How Fokke?
Hi, Francesco. Hi.
Hi,
Nice to meet you.
So we are now live for the 9th edition of our Design the Future. Today, the subject is about luxury retail. And as usual, we have some very esteemed guests with us today. And I will start introducing Fokke Morel of VRDV. And VRDV, she's a partner in VRDV. I'm sure everybody knows this practice. She was one of the first architects to join the group, and she's now leading the interior architectural department of MVRDV. And Fokke, among her work, is also has been taught at Harvard and Cambridge, and she's tutoring at The Hague Royal Academy of Art. So welcome, Fokke.
Thank you.
Then we have Peter Polito of Polito Flights Group, also IF Group. Peter studied architecture in Stuttgart and Chicago. Then he set up Polito Flights Group together with Gunther Flights in 2002, building an impressive international reputation for interior architect communication product design project. So they also won several awards, among those I've called Red Dots ADC Awards. Welcome, Peter.
Hi, nice to be here.
And then last but not least, Francesco Fraser is a partner of Pure Arch in Milan. He founded, they practiced in 96 together with other 3 partners. And he focused mainly on the management of international projects. Also, Pure Arch is an award-winning studio with several awards and prizes and 2 gold medals for honorable mention at the Milan Triennale. Welcome, Francesco.
Thank you.
So we will start with to break the ice just with a simple question about the influence of pandemic. I will start with Fokke. With the influence of the pandemic in the way we design and conceptualize the retail environments. And also about a recent poll of Forbes that asked between 55 luxury industry executives that 2/3 of them believe that the COVID crisis will bring positive changes to the luxury business. So what are your thoughts about these changes, and are they going to be really positive change in your opinion?
Yeah, well, what happens with the luxury industry, I'm not really that deep into it, so you shouldn't ask me, but if I see the clients that we have and around me, then of course people have been locked up for almost a year now before we can really go out again. And I think all the good thoughts that we have had the last time during COVID, like being more sustainable, flying less, and it's all not necessary. As you can see, we can still be home, etc. So it all is very good, but as soon as we can go out, we will. I'm pretty sure we will fly again, and we will shop again, and we will do everything that we thought we would do less. I hope we're gonna learn from this period of time, but I'm not so sure. So I think indeed it might be just so that the first at least year or so, everybody is gonna just go out there. And of course, it's also a matter or a fact that some people or many people got actually more poor, unfortunately, losing jobs. So and the rich actually stayed rich. So the difference between those 2 worlds will be even bigger. So I think that's going to be more prominent even.
But did this bring some changes to the way that you guys design the projects?
Yeah, in terms of design, I think there's many issues that we already try to take into consideration before, indeed the sustainability, but also the let's say oversize of your buildings, making it more public, making it very accessible for everybody, making indeed the high-end world even a bit more transparent. These kind of issues we already try to put forward in our designs, and now even more. It is actually very apparent. So it's good to keep that up. So I think the first thing is very practical, just to give more space. I think that is something that just makes it easy for people to move around in whatever circumstances.
Thank you. I will ask Peter the same question. What is your opinion? How is the IF group reacting to this in terms of design?
Well, I'm not quite sure whether the question is right, to ask whether this change is positive. I think the fact is that there's change as it's constant being changed. But COVID is certainly accelerating ideas about our society and how we perceive our situation within, a global perception, and reflecting that in a much more drastic way. And of course, that ultimately changes the way how we look into many things, not only luxury industry. So we'll see a lot of things similar to other fields of our work. So the sense that there's a movement which has, of course, to do with generational change, from owning things to actually experiencing things, that there's a strong idea from profit to purpose, which I think is one of the biggest driver for the luxury industry, because they have to change the business model, right? The way how they perceive luxury. It's not anymore about representation. It's more about, well, it used to be representation of status, then it's became experience, and now it's purpose. And with that comes a totally different sense of how you represent yourself as a brand, how you create touch points, how you have to take into account digitalization as part of a multi-channel experience world, which is a much more fluid, more multi-layered, more complex experience, and has to create a totally different personality. That's not something necessarily, which is good or bad. It's just something which happens, and it was there before, but it accelerated quite a bit. So I think it's quite exciting, and in that sense, yes, it's positive, right? Because I think change is interesting in terms of it gives you the opportunity to reflect where you come from and what your position, and your stance is within all the things which are happening around us.
So it certainly brings evolution, or if you want, also partially a revolution. Francesco, what is your opinion about this? And is there really this effect of positivity, or you think it's a natural evolution of the industry?
Well, first of all, you introduced that as a simple question. I think this is an incredible complicated question to try to figure what will stay of the COVID in the future. I'm deeply convinced that this period, this year that we spent, has already entered in our culture. And even if I agree with Fokke, and I hope with Fokke that soon we will start again to fly, to travel, to live the social life. Most important is to live the social life again. I think this experience will stay in our culture. And when you ask me about the fashion or the luxury sector, and also that there has been a question in the luxury sector that this will be as positive changes. I can tell you from my experience with the luxury sector, we're working with Dolce & Gabbana, with Fendi now, with Gucci. The luxury sector doesn't know. They have no idea what is going to happen. I'm talking constantly every day with CEOs, with some luxury brands, and the uncertainty is the biggest thing you can feel in this period. We don't know. We don't know what is going to happen. But of course, we are living this as a historical change. It's like in every period, any crisis brings to a change, to a revolution. And I agree with Peter. COVID has been an accelerator of process that has started before. So I believe to understand what is going to happen in the future in the luxury sector, in the retail sector, but generally I think in all the sector, we have to understand and focus more on what happened just a little bit before of COVID in all the aspects of our life, in the environment, relation with the environment, in the social life, because this process of I absolutely agree of distancing between a rich small world and a big poor world has started even before. So COVID is an accelerator. To understand what is happening in the future, we have to deeply understand the process that were engaged in their nearly past, and analyze them, admit our mistakes, and try to face everything in a new way. If you ask me about luxury, I think again that the process of the department store crisis already started before. The crisis of the big commercial center has been already a few years going on.
Has been accelerated, as Peter
So
said.
COVID is an accelerator, but again, we have to look on the nearly past to understand what is
So
going on.
this is to some extent introducing another question that I wanted to ask you, because at the moment, and I will ask to Fokke first, at the moment there is a big talk in the industry about this word demoling, meant as a dismissal, or I'd say to reduce the importance and the size of shopping malls, which are of course big aggregation point, which we cannot sustain at the moment for several reasons. And what is your opinion about this demoling effect? Do you think that it's something that will really happen? It's permanent, or it's just a temporary measure?
No, I think it is not a temporary thing. Of course, it's indeed a change that Peter was already explaining, going from owning stuff to buying and now experiencing. And then, so this is an evolution that goes on and on. I think it's interesting indeed to see that we, not just in the high end or the luxury industry, but also, let's say, the low end world of shopping, we've been asked for many different researches to indeed see how the shopping will actually change. Yeah, so from malls, indeed, like of course introverted spaces somewhere in the outskirts of the city, only reachable by car, etc. That's not a destination anymore. So it's clearly outdated, and really a pity of the use of space, especially outside of the cities. So to have that change, see how to see, or at least how we envisioned it, is to see how we can, let's say, turn these spaces inside out, to really make them open, to make it more transparent, just really to show what is going on. And it's not just a demand from the clients to understand, or the customers to understand where their products come from, but it's also a gesture to be more inclusive. To be more either really outside the city, but then very close to other hubs, for instance, close to an airport or close to a train station. So it's not just reachable by car, but it's also based on public transport, or really in the city centers again. And then to see how to either match with the city center and become more of that. So a little bit back into history, maybe as an atmosphere, but at the same time, really be, of course, a mix of program also. So it's not just shopping solely, but it's also part of the city in terms of governmental services, maybe, or healthcare, or education, or I don't know, elderly home. I mean, there's a lot of interesting programs,
Opportunities and possibilities.
Indeed. Yeah.
But
really
do you see, you guys also, like the F Group, you also have offices in Asia. So do you see a geographical difference between Europe and for example, Asia, where, let's say, historically, shopping mall anyway has always been extremely important?
Yeah.
Just to summarize very, very briefly.
No, just to refer to some of the projects that we do. For instance, one indeed in Asia, and in Bangkok, there it's really based on a mall. It's a sort of a traditional mall, but then it's a nicer location. It's in the city, but it's really more traditional, let's say. So just to make a very beautiful store and in the way that we knew it. But then at the same time in Europe, in Germany, for instance, we just finished a research looking indeed into an inner city location of a department store, actually trying to see how to open it up and mix it, indeed, link it better to the city. But then again, in Turkey, we also did a research project to see how to connect indeed such a location, like more leisure or leisure destination very close to an airport, and to really focus on just getting the buying, let's say, the commercial side. So there's and then in Dubai we actually have one project at this moment where they indeed want to link it more to the community, which is very close surrounding it. So there's many different ways.
Sure. And I will ask that also to Peter in terms of his opinion about this process of demoling, and also about the different geographical specialization, which also seeing that you have an office in China, which is working pretty active intensively now.
Well, I think Fokker is totally right. It really depends on the context. You can't just talk about malls in general. You know, the American strip mall has a totally different idea than a shopping mall in the center of Shanghai. But in general, I would say, yes, the closed environment, which kind of lands as a satellite somewhere, as a closed environment and is decontextualized, is not a solution anymore. So we're looking in any respect about into solutions which are opening up, which are creating kind of a hybrid experience, which are interweaving with the fabric of the context, whether it's an inner city situation or an airport, creating a seamless experience, which not only is referring onto or depending onto a retail experience, but to trying to give an added value. So in China, a lot of the shopping malls are investing into, not only investing, it's quite often a juxtaposition about investing into art and an owner who actually is an art collector, a major art collector, and that this is kind of mixing into an idea about giving the shopping mall experience a bigger purpose, whether it's hospitality, whether it's work, whether it's actually hotel. And so the classic mixed use idea of having a shopping mall and a tower retail and a tower hotel is going to open up and becomes like one experience. We're working right now on a project in Shenzhen where inside out park, museum experience, hotel and work really becomes one fluid mixture and kind of interweaving constantly. And I think that's going to be one part of the future development of malls. So the mall is not bad per se. It really depends how you play it, but it needs to be put into context, and it needs to be responsible in the way how it reacts to its environment. And on the other hand, we'll see, of course, a lot of old shopping malls and department stores, which create fantastic opportunities to reuse. So, I'm so sick of all these office buildings. You know, you take a department store, which we did in Shanghai, and transform that into an office, and it's a much better office, right? Because it has everything you're looking for. It has high ceiling, it has a variable floor plan, you have a good vertical collection, connects everything. So there's benefits there which you couldn't plan if you do like an efficient office building, but it opens up, again, a view about how to reinvent the city. And it brings back ideas of use into the inner cities, which we didn't see for the past 20 or 30 years in uniforming our inner city experiences with brand experiences, which are all pretty much globally the same. So there's a big chance in that.
Okay, so still opportunity. Francesco, your opinion about this, and then I will ask another question.
Well, as I was saying before, with the COVID, we had an acceleration, and actually the crisis of the mall started already a few years ago. I think it's related also by the rapid growth of the e-commerce and by the changes of the customers, especially of the generation of the customer. And going back to the main theme, the luxury retail. which is in a way connected to that. I think that the store of tomorrow is going to focus on the shopping experience. We are coming of a period of incredible growth of the luxury in terms of positioning. I mean, if we draw a history, the luxury really the luxury in terms of ready to wear, that really started 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the real growth. Before was an exclusive luxury. Now it's more, let's say, wide open luxury. There was, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, the beginning of the connection with online and offline shopping. The big luxury brands weren't that convinced at the beginning. Now they understand the strengths of the online shopping. So why do we need still shops? We need still shops because we need this specific experience that we don't have online. We could basically buy everything online, and that's why I think the online is slowly eroding the mall, because they're giving probably the same opportunity, the same variety, but in a virtual place, which many people prefer to use, and in this period of lockdown, I think we've been all forced to use. While the luxury shop needs, even if it has a strong positioning on the online retail, needs this kind of experience. The new customer, the new generation of customer is less interest to accumulate, but and it's also less. There's less fidelity in that. There is so the young customer, they change very fast. The different brands. So the brand has to offer an experience, which is something you cannot do home. That's why mall in general, but also department store, are feeling slowly a crisis, because the new spaces that we are creating is not only about retail, it's about working, it's about entertainment and social life. Have to, from now on, reconsider that we need to offer a specific experience to the people. Otherwise, they might prefer to shop at home, or they might prefer to stay at home to watch Netflix and go or live in Facebook and go more and more in their isolation, which the internet is creating. While we have to offer the social life, a stronger social life. I think, sorry if I go a bit long, but I think that in this year, we have been hearing too many times the concept of social distancing, which is a paradox. The distance has nothing to do with sociality. Sociality is the relation between people. So when the COVID will slow down, hopefully soon, we have to start thinking of reconsidering the proximity. So everything has to be dimensioning this definition of a new proximity. New proximity that I will define in a very simple way. With friends, you're going to be socialized again with your relatives, but in the normal social life, I think we will have for a long time a slightly more distance, or a bigger proximity than before, and that's why I think the offering a quality social shopping, entertainment, cultural life, that is the key point, and on the
at a higher level of experience. Well, you have briefly touched this subject of the young consumer, which of course are becoming the largest segment of the luxury buyer, and of course it's very important for the luxury brands to understand how to relate and win the interest of this new segment of customers. And it cannot be only, you were mentioning digitalization, but it cannot be only that. Fokke, what do you think? How How will this influence the future design of stores? Or the future
Yeah, I
design
think,
of experience stores, to use the words of Francesco?
well, first of all, I think Francesco's really right. There's this huge urge and hunger for people who to indeed gather, of course, again, especially after COVID, but anyway, to come together, to actually also, if you're talking about shopping, to actually feel the textile, to show off, to, you know, so there's a lot of needs, let's say, besides the shopping itself, and that's indeed, so I hope there we can actually move a bit more into the indeed quality public space instead of, let's say, just a sort of theme park direction, as you also see in many occasions. And at the same, yeah, and this online and offline shopping. So the online shopping, doing it fast, and the offline getting more and more into an experience. I think these are really just two parallel worlds, and it would be nice if they come more together, because now they're very separate. It's indeed just a fast way of getting online. There's no experience there, or there is really a huge opportunity, I think, to make it much more interesting and much more interactive. And I think the whole technology is really there, but it's not really used, maybe, as especially in the luxury industry, more and more, of course. But and on the other hand, indeed, the experience, as I just said, hopefully really focusing more on the public realm rather than just being commercial. But the target groups, I think, for these kind of industries are extremely complex. Of course, there's lots of research done, but like, who is my client? How should I address them? But it's so complex by now. It's not very determined. I have my old classic client who comes back every two times a year, and he will or she will buy this and this. And I think it's very complex to understand. So you should not really only look at target groups, but really try to. I mean, these people just want to connect. I think that is the biggest thing. Try to connect to a brand. They want to be part of it. I think that is the biggest challenge, to see how to connect to your clientele, either online or in this experience.
Of course, and also a physical experience is a
Yeah.
very important part of that. So, Peter, what is your viewpoint? Are you in the IF group also already employing more digital marketeer for this purpose, or how do you approach this in your office?
Well, first of all, I'm not quite sure whether they want to be part of the brand, as Fokke says. I think there's a change here. I think we're facing a generation, and you know, like in 5 years' time, there's going to be like half of our target group in the luxury sector, right? There's Gen X, Gen Z, and millennial. I think they're looking for individuality. And so I think that's a profound paradigm change, you know, in the way how a luxury brand needs to act and needs to understand that they are not like selling their brand image, but they are more, they need to become an enabler, like a platform for people to kind of feel that they can develop their own personality. And of course, that is, as Francesco said, a very fluid experience. They're not loyal anymore. They're looking for credible, believable, purpose-driven content, basically, right? And it's the same. We have the same discussion in workplace. So there's a change of what a brand should do, which is different than 20 years ago to what we're looking for in a contemporary brand and looking 10 years ahead. And then, of course, if you make that shift, that's going to change the physical experience of a brand as well, because again, it develops from a representational, closed environment of a brand image to something which is much more open, much more hybrid, which is much more a fluid connection between online and offline experience, which is much more purpose-driven, which is more about innovation and disruption, because luxury is always something connected to, you know, freedom and courage. You know, you can do things because you're like in that segment of of thinking freely, and that's so that the moment of disruption, I think, becomes a very important driving force into a brand image, and to stay interesting and to create an atmosphere of experience, because experience is something we're discussing for the past 10, 20 years. So today we are past experience, and Lee Edelkort was the first one to in March hiss the flag to say, now we're in the post-materialistic times, and so there's a, which is a good sign for that kind of urge that we went a little bit too far. We're exhausted in globalization, we're exhausted in our materialistic view, we're exhausted with the acceleration of our life. We with so many things we're exhausted, and so now in COVID, there was for a brief moment everybody thought now it's going to be solved, everything, and of course it's not solved, right? But it kind of made us aware, and I think it promoted that change in which I think is a faster and more profound change in any respect of how we look at design, not only in luxury, because it's connected to generational change as well. And so we have to address that, and how that's been answered. Of course, every brand has to develop their own story, right? I think Burberry, for example, did an excellent job in integrating offline and online experience in a multiple way. So I think what we need to learn is that it's not about setting up a screen and saying, I'm digital now, or having a nice app or something, but it's about a rather complex, multi-layered, constant conversation with your user on every channel. And so the physical experience needs to be woven into that experience, however the brand does that. And that, of course, differs from brand to brand, because it's about the brand personality. And so I rather look for a personality which creates friction. I think that is more interesting, because friction creates identity, and it creates a moment of appropriation, rather than having an embracing old idea of a luxury brand, which I just adopt my style. So I think we're over the times that we're a little bit beyond already the time that the 30-year-old Chinese secretary saves her salary for 3 years to buy a Gucci bag, right? So it's there's a different idea of luxury now out there, which is driven, by the way, again by Chinese millennials, right? Because they're going to meet the biggest.
They are the larger in numbers, so of course is a great opportunity for the luxury industry, of course. Francesco, your opinion about this?
Well, we had to remember that the luxury brands didn't believe very much in the e-commerce at the beginning, so now they're taking back. I mean, they're in a very fast way taking back, especially now after the beginning of the COVID period. There's been very interesting development in that. Of course, now the main topic, the main word is omni-channel. It's let's say the next step to put together to understand that it's very important to put together, to integrate offline and online. Before it was more separate, the idea of that you have a physical store and then you have online activities. Now the whole thing are more and more integrated in a direction that omni-channel, and the growth of the online shopping of the big players like Net-a-Porter, Luisa Via Roma, Yoox, or Porter are showing to the brands what a huge market it is. At the same time, the brands are moving very fast in that direction, especially looking at the younger generation. For example, it's very interesting to notice how the idea of a fashion show is changing very fast. In this period, this year, there hasn't been the possibility of doing fashion show, and we have again to remember that fashion show is something really new. It comes from the late 80s. I mean, in the 80s, the real fashion show began to be a marketing action from the fashions brand. Before, the fashion show was something that you were doing for limited public in the showroom. So the fashion show became an event. Now that the fashion show is in question, other brands are moving very fast in other direction. We saw that Gucci did the film presentation of the show with as a film. Dior,
Also Dolce Gabbana has been doing some movies.
also Dolce Gabbana, but for example, Dior is presenting now the new collection on Twitch. Twitch is I don't know who is familiar with Twitch. I know it through my kids. It's one of the biggest platform for presenting or playing for games. Balenciaga is doing on TikTok, and other brands and Off-White make the presentation of his collection like a game, like a virtual game. So they're going very fast in this sector, in this multi-channel sector, where they're reaching the young generation and they offering also content. Let's see how interesting is, for example, the whole story that Dior is creating about the woman, the consciousness and of the woman by presenting by their shows different I mean, there was a show where they bring up all the literature, feminist literature movement. So they are giving an identity, a strong identity to attract new customer. So this direction is very important, and this is why the physical stores will survive, because the online is not able to eat everything, because customers still need the physical stores to have a physical experience, to touch with their hands the things, but at the same time we don't have to forget that the mechanism that will happen is that there will be a strong relation between online and offline, much more than has happened in the last year.
Of course, and we have, as a manufacturer, we hope that the physical store will still remain, and we'll ask a question from our specific sector, because of course the light is something that is very intangible, but it's very important, to define the space. So in a retail store, this is something that makes a huge difference. If you use the wrong illumination, you risk not to, highlight your product properly. So, Fokke, in the future, do you see any remarkable change in the role of lighting in retail stores? Or do you see the lighting more involved with technology? How do you see that?
Yeah, I think you don't want to hear this, Danilo, but I think daylight is actually is more crucial than, of course, it's always a combination, but I think that is indeed part of the opening up of retail as a whole, and that indeed to have daylight or these sort of normal situations and changing situation, that it can actually, it's not a constant circumstances, but it can actually move along with the seasons and the time of day. Like I'm going to be in the dark pretty soon, actually. I think
it's lovely. It's lovely to see you in your greenhouse, actually. So I think you spend a lot of time in the last months.
This has been my home basically. So and I'm very much attached. But it's indeed it's amazing how, because now it's getting cold, of course. So I cannot really be here all the time. So the circumstances need to be good. But just to understand, just working in this kind of place where the daylight is there constantly has such a huge effect on how I work, and how just that it's really uplifting, and I think that's for any space really good, but also in retail it's just very important, I would say, to see things more for real, and not just in certain circumstances and conditions, but to have that.
So do you think that artificial light should mimic natural light?
Well, I think it would be a nice combination. I think always the nicest time of the day, I would say, in terms of experience, more dramatically is sort of the end of the day, and that always is a combination of daylight, which is still there, which is very often also colored, and artificial light. So I think it will also be also in retail will be just a combination, and sometimes maybe it's good in circumstances that it's indeed mimicking daylight. We have now the Art Depot, not retail, but also with a lot of light fixtures really based on daylight. And it brings a very different and very comfortable atmosphere. But then, of
Right.
course, you also want to have some drama. So you have to be specific in where you want what. So
Of course, you cannot have uniform illumination. But yes, when I'm talking about light, I mean also, of course, artificial, but also natural light. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands from the audience. Peter, your opinion? I think that to some extent what Focke was saying about natural light. Of course, there is a technology nowadays that can, to some extent, mimic the natural light, but it's not the same thing. But it's no longer the old days when I remember. My mother going into a shop and coming out, and she has bought a pullover that looks different from what it looked inside the shop. So this is something that definitely must be avoided. So how do you see the future of lighting in retail?
That might be like a minimum requirement, right?
Of course. I was making just simple, because it came to my mind, these things about, my mother being complaining about that.
Well, I think obviously Focke is right. I mean, in an increasing digital world, of course, our relationship to nature and hence daylight is something which is reflected like pretty much in all projects, right? So depending on your context, I think there's no reason that light needs to be static, not in retail, not in workspace, right? So whether it's as you said, seasonal or daylight, biodiverse light, I think of course is a great opportunity to have a dynamic experience of a space. Obviously, without light, we wouldn't see anything. So light is going to be a crucial element to create an experience and and it's a fantastic opportunity, especially now that light became so minimal in size. So we don't really have to think about the lamp, but we really talk about light as an experience. And of course, that gives a fantastic opportunity to create ever-changing, even interactive, might be even personalized experiences in a space, not only in retail. But of course, that is an opportunity I think we'll see in the future. We'll see that in hospitality as much as we see that in workspace, and we're definitely going to see that in high-end retail environments.
So we can say more natural, more integrated,
more personalized.
And then what else, Francesco?
Well, if we talk to light, it's a long discussion also because every time we design a store, a shop, we have as a feedback always the same from the client. He will tell you how he would like to have the shop, but at the end, any client says, but most important is the light. The reason is because retailer knows that with the good light, with the right light, you can really sell more or sell less. They understand how important is the light in the commercial activity, and probably is something that also we understand all because it's so uncomfortable or unpleasant sometimes when we go to some places and we see a terrible light. So for the luxury stores, light is important and will become even more important because we are moving from a period where the brand was doing the biggest attraction for the shopper. So the name sometimes, you know, the brand, and that brought to some also. I know many shops that where I can say that even luxury shop that the light is not very exciting, and more will be important not the brand but the product, what you offer to the customer. That's why the light has to be always very with the intention of the lighting has to be very clear. If you have to point out the product, if you want to give the right temperature of the light to evaluate the colors, if you want to create an atmosphere or more lounge space. So I think technical light will be more important. Optics, to work on the optics will be also more crucial to offer a variety of lighting. I think the work in the light in the stores will more and more be part of the story, and not just of general lighting, which was the case of many stores where we just put a lot of light and you have a bright light where actually you can see everything, you can see the product, you can see the colors, but it will be more and more part of the story, and that's why the technical light will be more important.
So we can resume with the more natural, more integrated in the architecture and more technological. So these are the three, let's say, direction. I would say that our industry changed completely since the LED has been introduced. We become no longer the electrical industry. We are part of the electronic now, because this is also merging to that discussion, this digitalization that we have anticipated earlier. Well, I would like to ask a last question as we approach in the end, and I will ask you to be as concise as possible, please, because then I will wrap up with some, I will ask you also some final thought just to wrap up. So I would like to ask you a question about the relevancy, which has become a new legacy for a lot of industry, but also in the luxury business, it will be more and more. So everybody is pressurized to be more transparent, engaging, customer-centric. Does it affect the design process? Okay.
Does it affect the design process? Yes, of course. I mean, it's part of the research that we normally start with, and also the questions from these clients. And for instance, with Crystal House, the project we did in Amsterdam some years ago already, was actually not for a specific retailer, but in a very high-end retail zone in Amsterdam. And
so people will remind this the Chanel bricks transparent shop, right?
Yeah, at this moment actually it's Hermes.
Yes, yes, we know that. We know that. No, but yeah. That's why I was saying people does remember.
Exactly. No, it's a full glass brick monument actually. So it's a completely rebuilt of a historic building, which we could not, or we had to make a replica of. And on the one hand, it's done all in glass brick because we wanted to not make a distinguishment between the upper part of the historic buildings and the very, what we see shop window, like very different plinth, which is breaking up the street side. So that was, of course, one thing to just make one big vitrine, basically. And but the other thing is, of course, to really reveal what is there and to try and open up indeed this high-end world, which is very seclusive, of course. So it's a bit of a hint from our side to really make it transparent, literally. And as I said before, it's also a demand from clients, of course, to understand more, like what are they buying, where is it coming from, how is it made, so it's sort of an introduction or a hint to indeed, really open up in that sense and be more honest.
Also in the design. So Peter, your opinion about this? Do you see that your client are also going more in this direction of relevancy as a new legacy?
Well, yes, for sure. When we're talking about that, our target groups are looking more for purpose, then relevance is a different word for that. And without relevance, there is no sustainability. So I mean, it should be self-understanding that everything we do as a designer, it needs to create a value for people. Otherwise, it's simply worthless. It's just beautiful or something, But I think we're looking into a different way of designing things, right? Because we're pretty much trained in designing objects, right? Whether it's a building or interior or a product or something. And right now, and I think we're all doing that already. Design is much more a rather complex process, which starts much earlier, which ends much later. And it needs to be in a holistic process, whether you do everything in your studio, but it needs to, when we're talking about, how online and offline integrates and all these, the complexity of our situation, that of course, is being represented in the complexity of our planning situation, and it needs to have a holistic approach. And the second part obviously is, and that should be self-understanding as well, everything we're designing is user-centric. It's not about the sender, it's not about the brand, it's about the user. And of course, that shouldn't be new, but I guess it's kind of new. But it's quite a change in how you look at projects, right? So to be consequently user-centric changes the way how you design quite certainly.
Thank you. Francesco, on this last question.
Yeah, I confirm that the relevance is becoming in the luxury segment more and more important, especially because it's luckily, I'm happy about this process. It's part of the story, as I was saying again. Most of the thing now is a story. The key word is the storytelling. People are more aware. They want to know more about the story of a process, of a product, and they are with the time they're getting more conscious that we have to work also on the ethic level, and that affect us as a designer, and also as a citizen, and by doing the whole thing,
at all levels.
At all levels, and also as a shopper. As a shopper, you start asking yourself when you go to a mass market and you buy a pullover, just a few euro, you start asking yourself, but who's losing on this process? Who's suffering on this process to be able to buy that at €5? Actually, you ask yourself the same thing when you buy a sweater at €500. And I understand that that's the issue of the luxury store, the remark. But to be more ethic in all the steps of the process, it's very important. And we as a designer are I think are moving in this direction, luckily in the right way, by trying to express also the transparency of either of the brand of the company through the design, up to using the right material, or to start to thinking how a building, a project can be affecting the carbon strategy, and can affect the sustainability in general. So, and I think that, just to conclude, all these issues that we touch, the sustainability, the social issues, the respect for the nature, more transparency, more ethic, are at the end the real vaccine for COVID. and is not only the medical vaccine, but the real vaccine for the COVID is to be reinforced about to putting this value on the first point, and trying to build up a world where we have
A better world.
well, but the word, it's easy to say that a more equal world. I just start what we said at the beginning, which Fokke was mentioning, a world where I reestablish, I recover what actually this pandemic has done. I create a more distance between people of different social level, and so we have all to try to, which was something that already started before. So it's not
sure.
It's not because of the pandemic. The pandemic make it more clear. So we have to work on that.
Good message to conclude. So I will make then as a wrap up. I think we've gone through several subjects today, and I would like to ask you, Fokke, any final thought or message that you want to share. And also, I add this one, something interesting that we can expect from MVRDV for the future.
Something interesting. Yeah, no, I think it's indeed.
It's always very exciting what we see, but excite us a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's indeed, again, in line with what we did and how COVID accelerated things. And so of course, we are still there and looking sort of in a negative way at how we are restricted and what we cannot do, and also more the negative side. Well, if we start to see the opportunities of this, and that is not, going around with tape saying no, you cannot go there, or with like signs saying stop and just one direction. That's not the way to go, for sure, and also not to design with, for sure, but to indeed really see the opportunities and also learn from what we see, what can easily be achieved, and not just afterwards just run from there and do as if nothing happened. So indeed, we'll still pursue making spaces more public, getting more quality into the public realm, making it inclusive, trying to be as sustainable as possible. All these topics that were there, but then also I hope to be pursuing them in an accelerated way, not just during COVID, but also afterwards. And yeah, what we try to do, and what I personally try is to turn it into a fun project. And as soon as it becomes fun, it's also it should, of course, first should be relevant, and then the fun happens afterwards.
Okay.
So
okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your contribution. Peter, your message. I think you were. I saw that you were nodding when Fokke was giving her message. Maybe you want to add something.
I guess we're heading in the same direction, right? It's really about indulging change and embracing the complexity of our world instead of complaining about it, right? I think the complexity is just something we just have to deal with, and I think it opens up a million new opportunities to question yourself, the way how you run business, the way how you deal with your environment, the way a relationship are being shaped, your responsibility as a designer, the way how you create things. And I think it's a super exciting time right now. And so I'm looking forward right now. We enjoying, as weird as it sounds, because it puts us in this really dense moment right now, not traveling, rethinking a lot of these processes for us. It's a super exciting time. And so we hope that we keep that energy, right? In a situation where a lot of grown boundaries seem to fall, and things are influencing each other, and I think that's super exciting to learn. And learning, I think, is the main topic for us in the future, right?
So keeping energy is actually, I think that going back to the the post-COVID, that will require a lot of energy. I think physical energy. While we saw also, Fokke, the natural light is disappearing. You were playing with artificial one. So, well, you see the difference. In Rotterdam, you still have natural light outside, while you see in Francesco and in my place was already in the dark. So, Francesco, your wrap-up message to the audience.
Well, I think we understand in this months how resilient is the human being, how able he is to adapt himself to all different conditions, and COVID was by far not the worst thing that happened in our, let's say, century, in the last 100 years, but still had made us thought a lot. Also because it was in a way really global. I think that in this resiliency of adapting ourselves, and I do believe that COVID will not disappear from one day to another, but there will be a long process before we're going back to the so-called normality. I think we have to reach this normality with completely different ideas and different attitudes, because if the normality is to go back of where we were, that would be a disaster. The new normality has to be learning from this experience, adapting ourselves to the new condition, and to think new way of interpreting the contemporary period,
and transfer this concept into our day-to-day work.
From many point of view, because otherwise we are lost, and we have to always consider that in this period that we experience, we lost many things. We didn't lose only our, let's say, freedom to move or to relate to ourselves, but we lost enormous legacies. Like we lost our we're getting loose of our culture. Let's think how much for 1 year we didn't went to a theater, or at least here in Italy, we didn't went to theater, we didn't went to concerts, we didn't went to exhibitions. So we are losing one of the most important thing, which is part of the sociality, the let's say the cultural relation in the sociality, and we have to gain that again and put more strengths, efforts, and money in that.
Okay, thank you very much, Francesco, also for your contribution. So I would like to thank, of course, all three speakers, guests, Peter, Focke, and Francesco, for their lovely participation. Today we've been also even longer than any other, Design the Future appointment, also because it's the 9th of the year and it's the last one. So I'm saying that for the audience, that it's our plan also to start again in 2021, maybe with a slightly different format. We still are thinking about that, but really enjoyed going through this kind of discussion, not purely related to our specific business, but more open to the architectural world. And I'm very thankful to everybody who's been following us and participating. We are very proud because we started with 1/3 of the subscription, and we ended up in this last appointment with the triple the subscription that we had at the beginning. So it means that we are happy, to give a little contribution to the global discussion. So thank you very much again to Focke, Peter, and Francesco, and see you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.